right, we're going to start, and please, stand if you're here, and we're going to say Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call.
Alternate Commissioner Terry Sotile. Here. Commissioner Janae Alms. Here. Commissioner Diane Strader is absent. Commissioner Tom Frankum.
Here.
Commissioner Mark Herman.
Here.
Commission Chair Kaylin Sue.
Here.
Vice Chair William Loftus.
Here.
Commissioner Richard Blankenship. Here. And Commissioner Genevieve Wonder.
Here.
Okay, do we have any non-agenda items?
We do not have any public comment on non-agenda items. We have 2 on the agenda item.
Okay. Okay. So then we will move to our action item, and I think that's you, Megan, right?
Good evening, Honorable Chair Sue and Parks and Recreation Commissioners. Megan Crooks with the Neighborhood Services Department. I'm here to present to you the Capital Improvement Projects Parks proposed budget. An overview of the proposed program, I'm on slide 2. Fiscal year 2021 budget, the Parks Fee Fund balance is anticipated to have a approximately $6.9 million balance by June 30th. The total proposed budget for 2021 is approximately $2.2 million, which will leave a remaining balance of approximately $4.7 million. And then we are anticipated to have new revenues come in over the course of the year that will bring that balance up by another $1.2 million. And that's projected based on our anticipated residential units to be built. So depending on how development moves forward in the next year, we'll reevaluate that through the next budget process. I'm going to walk you through the projects that are in the proposed budget that City Council will be taking action on June 3rd, and that staff is recommending that the Parks and Recreation Commission recommend approval of. Existing projects that are currently in the budget is a Buccaneer Park facilities study. The balance of that project amount is approximately $240,000. That project is also budgeted in the Measure X budget for capital projects, and this project coincides with a number of other projects in or near that location, including the Coastal Rail Trail expansion and some of the projects regarding the creek restoration and the La Salina plant relocation. And We are working collaboratively internally as a city on all 4 of those projects and the timing. The first thing to move forward is the Coastal Rail Trail, and they're going forward with a design process which is going to engage the community. And with each of the projects, we're going to continually engage the community, and the piece on the Buccaneer Parks facility is going to slow down a little bit so that we can get that full community engagement process. So we aren't advancing too quickly on that project, and we are revisiting the community outreach focus of it. The Coastal Rail Trail City Match was budgeted out of parks fees. We got a grant, the city received a grant from Sandag in the amount of, I believe it's about $400,000 for the design of the Coastal Rail Trail. And so we're matching it with parks funds, which is an eligible use of the parks funds, and the rail trail project hopefully will acquire other funding sources for the construction once it gets designed. And again, both of those are existing, and both of them are reaching out to the community. It's not actively reaching out at this time, but it's going to be gearing up in the next, after June 3rd, it'll be gearing up pretty quickly. The operating projects, these are part of the parks fund, and one is park enhancements, and as I wrote in the staff report, it's nominal. There's about $10,000 to $11,000 in it each year. If we had a special request for it, we would come forward with that request to the Parks Commission or put it in the budget, but typically it's just there for little odds and ends that come up over time. We have used it for various reasons when community input, that there's just not enough trash cans, or there's just not enough park benches or something to that effect, and then we'll use the fund to help pay for that, because the operating budgets and public works are pretty much allocated to specific uses. The Parks Project Administration, that's a staffing position for work in the Development Services Department in engineering. And that position is currently vacant. It's been vacant for approximately 3 or 4 years due to savings, and we have been using consultants in the engineering department, regardless of what project they work on. But the funds here have remained, and they've just, if you see the detail budget in the staff report, you can see that the funds that were budgeted last year remain unused, and whether this position will get filled in the next year, I'm not certain. If it does, they will focus on the parks projects and help move those forward. But again, if the funding isn't used, it remains in the budget. It doesn't go anywhere. It just rolls right back up to the fund. The reason we continue to budget it is because if we don't, the position goes away. So we have to keep budgeting it in order to hold the position in place. The new projects that are proposed that we request the Parks and Recreation Commission to recommend to City Council is to move forward with installing field lights at Mance Buchanan Park. We're estimating $1 million. If the bids come in higher, then we would come back to the commission and city council to inform you of that and request new allocations. But we think that it's a fair amount to estimate. That will expand soccer use into the evening hours over, is it an additional 3 fields that would be lit? 2.5 fields at Mance Buchanan Park to have the lights go into the evening. Now again, that's not going to expand play when we're in a rainy season. So, but it will expand play into the evening, darker hours during the winter. The John Landis Recreation Center Park Study, it's kind of both the center and the park, $50,000. This is to get us started in working with the community in what needs, a needs assessment of what's needed out in that community. We have had some activity out there. The library bookmobile has started going out there again, so we know that there's a need for library services. And we also know that there's a need for resource services. Our resource staff from Neighborhood Services have been going out there to start offering certain resources. But what to do with the facility is what is needed the most out of the community. And there's was a 2-year contract with MiraCosta for a work training program out there, and we're hoping to reinstitute the community services at the facility after that contract is up. And so we want to get the study going so that we're ready to move into the facility and, of course, make any improvements that are needed as well. The park will be taken a look at the same time, and so of course, I will get to the next steps, but that's what that study project is for. The Pickleball Courts Phase 1, $200,000. That will include a study of what is needed for pickleball courts and where the best locations throughout the city are for that. But it will also include expanding the courts at Melba Bishop Park. So we'll be getting 2 things out of that project. Moving forward, hopefully, with the construction of the courts at Melba Bishop, but at the same time, we would be taking the study of where else we would want to put courts, so that when we get to Phase 2, we're working towards constructing and building those additional courts. The dog facilities study, $50,000. This is, again, to engage the community to determine, is it a dog park that's needed? Is it dog space at different facilities? Is it dog hours at parks? All of those types of questions get answered with the community and determining how to move forward and bring back a recommendation to the commission. And then the Calavera Creek Crossing design. This is something that we added into the budget, pretty near the budget workshop, because we were contacted by Preserve Calavera that it needed to be in, but also we have identified some potential grant funding sources that would be ideal for this, and we want to be shovel ready for that, and it's required to be shovel ready. So this was discussed during the Parks Master Plan. It's part of the trails that we already have a connection to from Oak Riparian Park that lead into Preserve Calavera and the trails in Carlsbad. And then also it would just add a new location where people are already crossing, but it's not safe and we need to put something safe in. The trails are already there. They could use a little improvement, but they're there. This hopefully will get us in a position to be able to be competitive for grant funding to construct everything. And it also includes a little creek restoration and a few other things there. So the future proposed projects that you see in the budget, again, the John Landis Recreation Center design. So before we get to construction, if we have any recommended, we'd need to design that. And then the El Corazon Senior Center Phase 2 design. We have a design, but we need to get it to final design, that final engineering piece, and then revisit any codes that we'd need to update the design to. And that El Corazon Senior Center Phase 2 piece, part of the original Phase 2 is being constructed with the Aquatic Center, which is the community facility on the north wing. And then on the south wing, there's a new set of classrooms that are part of Phase 2 that are supposed to be constructed. So we're hoping that designing in 21-22 would allow us to start construction following that in 22-23, and that would coordinate with the completion of the Aquatic Center construction so that we can move in with a new construction project at that site. So there'll be construction up there for quite a while, hopefully. The Buccaneer Park construction, that's slated for 21-22, but again, it'll just continue to get bumped a year if we're not ready to move forward based on the community input and where we're at with that. Then in fiscal year 22-23, we come in with a recommendation for Pickleball Courts, Phase 2, and that will be the results of what come out of the study. And then, as I mentioned, the El Corazon Senior Center construction piece. The cost for that is to be determined once we get that final design done and we can cost engineer it. The fiscal year 23-24, we move into the Pickleball Courts Phase 3 at $250,000. So the next steps are city council budget adoption. And so that you're aware, I know on the back of your detail budget, there's a list of future unfunded projects, but we identify them here in the Parks Fund because we keep putting these out in front of council to show that these things still need to be done. And these are projects that have been identified either by community input, facility assessment, things we've heard through the Parks Master Plan process. And as new things come up, we can add to this list. We just continue to add to it, and we keep putting it in front of City Council so that they're aware of these projects. As these unfunded projects, as other funding opportunities come up, we will look for those opportunities. So sometimes things go out of order because a funding opportunity, a grant funding opportunity comes up, and it's the project that fits the bill isn't necessarily the highest priority, but if we can get something done with an alternative source, then we'll move it to the front of the line because funding's available. So we do continue to put those in front of council so they're aware, and on occasion they'll pull them forward and say we'd like to advance that project. So we will keep the commission apprised if we get that type of direction from the council. The council budget adoption is scheduled for June 3rd, and assuming they approve the projects in the plan, then staff move to internal coordination with the engineering division to prioritize all of city CIP assignments. So the engineering division in their capital improvements group, they're assigned to project manage all of these. So they have to look at all of the priorities they're getting in from all departments and then prioritize which ones can move forward first. Of course, things that we can handle as staff in our own department will help move those forward, advance them the best we can, and we advocate for those. So, you know, if there's something that's a higher priority, please let us know so we can advocate for that once we get into the internal part of implementing them. We will be reviewing the pickleball plans that were submitted by the club. Sorry, that got pushed off the box there. We did receive design plans from the Pickleball Association, and they are in with the Development Services Office. They have funding to move design along for expanded pickleball courts at Melba Bishop Park. And so we're reviewing those to see what else is needed. And that's a partnership that we've been working on for many years prior to, that was initiated prior to the start of the Parks Master Plan. But we needed to finish the master plan first. So again, pickleball courts are identified in the master plan to we need more facilities, and we can hopefully have sufficient funds to get those expanded at Melba Bishop and then move forward with the study to see what else we can do in the city for the best locations. In addition to that, we will issue RFPs and then move forward with awarding them. So as we receive RFPs for the various studies or for the lights installation, we will, I'm not familiar with how we handle the procurement of the lights, but we work with Musco, so I assume that we will continue to work with Musco. We'll specify those lights in that system, but we'll have a contractor who actually does the physical installation give us bids on the project. And then we will issue an RFP for our studies, and we can do that two ways. We can go forward with each one separately, or we can put all the different facilities together in an RFP and ask for firms to bid as one project where they are going to handle all of those projects at the same time. So we might be able to get some cost efficiencies that way. Then we'll take the awards forward. We can bring them through the Parks and Rec Commission and then to council to move forward with the projects. And once we're moving in that direction, then we'll work with the commission and in community engagement. So commissioners can be part of the community engagement that's happening when we do workshops. And right now we do have some of that type of activity happening for the city, and it's happening through Zoom meetings and different things. So it's a different process, but we're getting used to it. It would be great if we can come together in person again, but we don't know what that looks like. But commissioners can participate in that to a certain level. We have to restrict how many can be present at each one, since you'll ultimately be voting on the plans when we bring those forward. So, and again, the commission as a whole will be able to participate when we bring those plans forward and review them with you for consideration and recommendation to City Council. From there, we move forward with different designs and construction, and that's generally how our CIP process works. Our recommendation is for the Parks and Recreation Commission, recommend for City Council adoption of the Parks Fees Capital Improvement Projects. And before we get to questions, we do have two public speaker items that would like to be read into the record, so I'll go ahead and read those now. From Diane Nygaard. Honorable Chair and Commissioners, now more than ever, we appreciate our parks and open spaces. Table 2.2 identified the master plan, identified immediate shortfalls in trails, pickleball, volleyball, and picnic shelters. Trails were also the key way to address the 3 geographic areas that lacked nearby park access. Please prioritize trails in the CIP. The second request to speak is from Joan Bachman. Friends of El Corazon are pleased the Aquatic Center is moving forward with construction costs already allocated. The opening is 1 year away and operating costs do not seem to be included in the budget. Please make sure our pool staffing and costs are included. So I'm going to go take my seat back over at the clerk chair, and I can work on the muting and unmuting. And if you want staff to elaborate or respond to any of those comments before commissioner comments, we can do so.
If I want staff to respond to any of the public comments, Megan? If I want staff to respond to any of the public comments, or what did? Yeah, I think if you could address the operating costs for El Corazon, that would be helpful.
Chair Sue and commissioners, with regard to the operating costs for the El Corazon Aquatic Center, we have an internal staff committee that we're kicking off. I have met with the city manager's office and let them know that we'll be putting together a programming plan, and then from that programming plan we would cost out all the expenses that would be necessary and put together a budget, and we will present that. We will present it to the Parks and Recreation Commission and hopefully get an opportunity to present it to the City Council. There's different ways different cities have started up facilities. Sometimes they are, we have the funding to just put on a new budget and move forward, and then sometimes they ask for an RFP process to see if there's private operators. If we did get that direction, and I'm not hinting that that's the direction, but if it did, just so you're aware, Parks and Recreation anticipates putting forward a proposal to that process so that we are considered as one of the operators as well. Now, we have no inclination that we're going to be given direction to go that way. That's why we're starting out with here's the proposed operation and the proposed budget. And we do have in the city's budget, there's funds that are set aside for that operation. Until we lay out the program, if we're going to come in right at that number, I don't know. I believe it's $800,000 that's set aside for the Aquatic Center.
For operations?
For operations. But it's not written into the budget until we have that itemized program put together. And so we're going to be doing that, and we're not certain how much of that budget would hit in the fiscal year 2021. The big heavy rains we had in the spring did delay the project slightly. So I don't believe we're looking at a June 2021 opening, but pushing it a little closer to August is the last I heard from the city engineer.
Okay, so it's not included until you have like a full what? Sorry, what?
An itemized budget,
Okay.
basically. And it's set aside. It's just not,
Okay.
you're not going to see the full programmatic type budget that you would typically see for any of our other rec centers or any other operations in the city. It's just funds set aside, waiting for that proposal to come forward.
Okay.
Okay?
So before we start, I just want to make a couple of notes for everyone. I want to remind everyone to use their microphones, especially the people in chambers, so that way the people that are on the phone can hear you well. This is an action item, so we are going to be taking a vote on it. I would encourage any creativity or any amendments or anything like that. We can pass this with anything that you would like to see added, or we can pass it as is. I just want to make sure that we are staying open to any additions or amendments. And the last thing is we're going to do this a little bit different than we normally do, whereas we just call on or just ask for questions kind of open. I'm going to call on people specifically so that we make sure that, since I can't see half of you, so I would like to start with Commissioner Herman, if that is okay with Commissioner Herman. So go ahead and unmute yourself as I call on you. So Commissioner Herman. Any questions?
I am
comments?
unmuted.
Great. So if you have any questions or comments.
I do not have any questions or comments.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Frankum? If you go ahead and unmute yourself, and if you have any questions or comments. Unmute, I believe, is *6. Do we have 4 people? Okay, Commissioner Frankum?
Yes, I'm here. Can I be heard?
Now we hear you. So if you have any questions or comments, we would love to hear from you.
I do. I have some comments. I wanted to mention that I believe I attended all of the community meetings for the master plan, and the way it was laid out was, I thought, done very well to give maximum input from huge numbers of people in our community. They had colored pens and maps of the city and all kinds of ways for people to indicate their interest. And the one thing I heard over and over was people want trails. They want trails that connect. They want trails that take people from here to there. And I wanted to make sure we give maximum consideration to the coastal rail trail. I also wanted to point out, although it's an aside this year perhaps, but as of recent months, the inland rail trail paralleling the sprinter tracks has now reached the boundary of Oceanside. And so the trail is completed through Vista, San Marcos, and Escondido, and it's at our doorstep. So we definitely need to put that into consideration in the near future. Possibly this year, possibly not. I guess that's all up to us tonight and the council in a couple of weeks. The coastal rail trail is too chopped up now to really be as effective as it could be, and so I definitely want to make sure that stays in the mix tonight. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the need for more playfield space, and the best place to do it with the, I guess, low-hanging fruit, the simplest and cheapest would be Buchanan, and adding those playing fields that could be lighted. So I would like to see the Buchanan lighting project stay in the mix tonight. I serve on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee to our City Council, and we have had a committee looking at the bicycle pump track out there for some time, studying locations and other parameters, and I would like to see that kept in the study also, in the budget also, because there's a huge demand for that. I don't know if people are familiar with it. It's a track that would be a loop that has curves and bumps, and it's very challenging, and there's a big demand for it throughout the country, and I think we're on track to include that by starting with the study that's being proposed here. And I believe that is the end of my comments for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Franken. Let's spice it up and we'll stay in chambers. Commissioner Blankenship, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, I do. I have a couple of things that I'd like to add.
You got to use the mic. You got to be all
It's on?
I
I'm
know,
on?
but you got to be close so they can hear you
Closer,
well.
okay. I, like Tom, appreciate the effort that went into gathering the data for the Parks Master Plan. But I'd like to ask this. I noticed that under new projects and future projects, am I to assume then that the dog facility and the pickleball courts are like number one and number two of what was seemed most important as a result of that study? How was it arrived at those particular activities would be funded as opposed to any other project?
Commissioner Blankenship and Commission, the projects that were determined to come forward in this particular project budget year, staff put together those items based on the amount of public comment, and even after the adoption of the master plan, we continued to get a lot of call for those facilities. Not only that, but the John Landis study, need for services out there and to ramp up recreation. And then, of course, the expansion of soccer or even field use, which brings the lights forward. Those are emphasized because of the amount of community input that has been received since, that has continued and not stopped. We even have interest lists starting to build that we already would have mailers to be able to go out to those that have interest in participating in those processes. So that's how staff formed those recommendations. And then these were also brought forward to the Parks and Recreation Commission in January to review and receive comment. And I believe that they were received positively, and so we proceeded with them. So, but there's no priority over one over the other in the what you see as proposed. So just in the listing order, that's not a prioritization. That's just where they landed on this, in the system. Did I answer the question, or is it something else that?
I don't specifically remember in January going over a list and saying, let's do this, let's do that, let's do another thing.
So what was presented to us was this. So if you go back a page, this is what was kind of like what Mark went over, and was just kind of like a general, these were some of those, this is what was presented.
Okay.
And there's been quite a bit of change from this, but this is what was presented in January.
Oh, okay. I have one other question, comment. With regard to the Buccaneer Park facility study, just out of curiosity, I think more than anything else, we've if I understand how to read this, we've already spent $100,000 of the $340,000 that has been budgeted for that. What has been learned from that $100,000? Is there any preliminary discussion as to what it's going to look like, what it's going to do? Did we get anything for our $100,000?
Commissioner Blankenship and Commission, staff had began to engage the community, and what was learned primarily out of that was that we needed to take a step back, work internally with the various projects that were going on. There's a number of staff members that have been involved in that project and have put some time towards this, and they've done some preliminary work on what originally had been planned with the concession stand and the restroom facility, and done some research and work on that. But really what we're hearing from the community is to take a step back and look at this as a larger project and be more inclusive of the whole area in looking at a study and a design and moving forward. So that's why it's slowing down a little bit. There's two areas, the creek piece and the coastal rail trail, because they're tied to outside funding sources. Those are advancing, but only with their designs and their environmental pieces. And those two items are pretty fixed. There's not a lot of wiggle room with what can be done with those. And I know the creek did have some extensive community outreach already. So the rest of the park and the La Salina plant piece are kind of slow down a little bit and bring it together as hopefully a larger project and something more strategic that would come forward for your input and weigh in. But we're also doing, the outreach will be done with the full community, and of course, commissioner participation on a limited scale can also be part of that process as well. And I believe it may already have been. But that's where it's at. And what we've learned is the project managers got up to speed with it, had worked with the concessionaire, did some site visits, met with some community groups in the South Oceanside community, and then internal staff meetings. But it's ultimately come to a slowdown and make sure that we get full engagement of the community.
Anything else? Commissioner Blankenship?
I guess it's for my own information here. I don't exactly see what amount, what's the bottom line dollar amount that we're voting on to approve?
To recommend,
Yes.
it's $2,221,644 is the recommended budget appropriation for fiscal year 2021.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that that was made clear. Unfinished, thank you.
Yeah, okay. I feel like I'm going to mess up your last name, Commissioner
Satilli.
Satilli. Yep, I wasn't going to go there. So Commissioner Satilli.
I have no questions on
Okay.
what's been proposed.
Okay. Commissioner Loftus, do you have any questions or comments? If so, unmute yourself.
I have no questions or comments.
Wow. Okay, Commissioner Wonder?
Did you hear me? No questions and comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Alms? Yeah. There you go.
I wanted to thank Megan and her staff for doing such a thorough job on this. I appreciate the way that it's been cut down so that we can see itemized things. They make sense to me. I really appreciate the improvement of the trails. I think Oceanside's got to be one of the prettiest places people could want to come walk around. I appreciate the improvements at John Landis that they're doing. I used to play tennis there, and we go into the facility periodically, and I am thrilled to see that we're making improvements there because it will very much enhance the community over there. So I'm really happy with that. And I think you really did listen to what the community wanted and the comments that you've been getting and have formulated this. So I'm really pleased and just want to thank you and your staff for your hard work.
Okay, that leaves me. So I have some questions and some comments. Kind of to echo Commissioner Blankenship's question about Buccaneer Park. For me, when I see like dog park study, I understand that what's being studied is, do we need a dog park? Like at Buccaneer Park, the study, like what are we studying? Like, and I get taking a step back, but like there's already a park there. So like what's going on?
Chair Sue and Commissioners, I think initially when this was put in the budget, and may have been 2 or 3 years ago, it was put in because a need to put in a new concession and restroom facility was much needed at that facility. And it's a very popular park, and it's also a beach park. And so there's because we have parking for the park, it becomes beach parking, and there's just a lot of use from beachgoers as well as the community. And in order to, and then we have environmental constraints because the creek is there. So in order to take a good look at what is the best way to update or put in a new concessionaire or restroom facility, and one, it was, should they be a combined building like they currently are? Or 2, should they be separated? And then and then where's the best location on the site plan to do that? So that's what the study was intended to be, to study where that would be. And if it impacted parking, then a parking study needed to be done. And, we had to evaluate all of those things. And then you can, once you know how you want to do things conceptually, then you can go out for a design for that building and then get those bids in and then move forward with construction. So that's what the study, and why it's called a study, was initially put in there. And then the construction funding for the new restroom facility was added into the Measure X budget to follow that. Well, because of the initial community outreach that had been conducted with community and some meetings that were called from neighborhood business groups in the neighborhood, and staff met with them, that's where we got into, okay, this is going to be a larger study. But because we have 4 different projects that are potentially going out there, it's not something we had to revisit with the budget, because we're going to cobble some funds from each of those projects to then perform that larger grade study portion. And really that's outreach and making sure everyone's happy with it. One of the things when we went through the Parks Master Plan process, Buccaneer Park is one of our inventory parks, and it was identified as, there are a list of potential opportunities to put different amenities in the park, and I think we had a lot of community input during that time opposed to change the park at all, and that rose this project to the level of city council, and we need to put the brakes on and we need to take a look at this. So whether or not this includes any of the amenities within the park, that will come out of the community process. I'm not going to suggest what will or won't get done as part of this. One of the things that staff is recommending, which was the initial project, is that we do need to do something about that restroom concessionaire building.
Yeah.
So the study is really more, it's turned into outreach.
Okay. Part of passing the master plan, I remember Councilmember Sanchez really wanted us to pass it so that there could be an increase in, I think, building fees. Where are we at with that? I know that we've, I think, emailed about that, but I just is that, where are we at with that? And how will that impact, perhaps not this year's CIP, but yeah.
Chair Sue and Commissioners, the study for the Parks Impact Development fees is underway. We did hire a consultant in December, I think it was late December. We did announce that when we had brought the master plan forward, that we already had a contract going forward for other planning purposes, and they also do impact fee studies, so we added money to that to support that. And we kicked off in January, and we doled out assignments, and and the internal assignments were, we did hold a meeting with folks regarding the El Corazon specific plan, because that's a big key piece in this fee. And I know that staff, it wasn't me, we have a single point of contact out of the city manager's office that's working with the Friends at El Corazon, and they had meetings. And our next step as staff is to revisit the site plan for the El Corazon specific plan, because if you look at current construction up there, what's underway, it wouldn't align exactly with the layout of that specific plan concept, just because things had to be shifted and adjusted based on the geotechnical issues of the site. And so what we need to do is we really need to take a look at where it's at and plot the current projects on there, and then see what remaining areas are there and which park areas fall within those areas, and then the feasibility of developing those sites.
Okay.
And once we have that, then the consultant can take that information and generate some cost analysis out of it to help us develop a fee. So we already know out of the Parks Master Plan, just list of amenities, we need more fields, we need pickleball courts, that kind of a thing. We know we can pull that cost piece together, but we did, not to have excuses, but COVID happened, and we shifted our priorities a bit in the city, but we are ramping up to start moving all of our planning processes forward again, such as the operations of the Aquatic Center. And then it's been on my mind to set up the next meeting for the fee study as well. So we are advancing, and we have made some progress down the road. It's not going to hit, we're not going to get to that final recommendation by June 30th like we had planned, but we are still advancing it, and it is still a priority for us.
Okay. You were obviously very involved in the master plan, like you presented it to us. In like the priorities of the master plan, field space was not something that I believe I recall it being a priority, but sitting on this commission, I feel like we hear consistently that there's a huge need for fields, huge need for fields. Why do you feel like there was a do you feel like there was a discrepancy, and if so, why?
I don't know that I would call it a discrepancy, but we didn't have that community input during the master plan process. All of our sports leagues were called upon during that time, but we didn't hear that feedback at the time. We did do the numbers calculation based on standards, and we identified how many more fields based on the specific plan and the El Corazon specific plan that we needed. And we did not include the fields that are currently up there because they're under private operation and there isn't the public access. So we didn't count them into our inventory. What happened, it was a timing piece, is that we did have some sports leagues come to city council immediately following the adoption of the master plan, and that started spurring some conversation about need for field access. And the lights at Mance Buchanan have always been a planned activity. So it was when they designed the park initially, they did stub it out so that they could easily do that type of enhancement at the park. And it has been listed as one of the future projects on the park CIP for a number of years, and we were just waiting for the master plan process to complete before we move forward. But that has been something that we've known, and that they do want more field access. The sports groups could expand enrollments if there was more time available on the fields. Do you want, Mark, on the programming level to add to that?
Yeah, Chair Sue and Commissioners, one other thing that changed during the process of the master plan is traditionally our joint use with the school district facilities has been much higher. Over the past 2 years, that has been reduced because of school modernization policies, which has not allowed as much access. So during I'd say over the last 3 years, that reduction in usage for the school sites has been greater than 50%, if not 60 to 70%. And so at the time of the input for the master plan, they had much more inventory to utilize, whereas as those have become unavailable, that has shrunken that down to our existing inventory, which has put a strain on the facilities that we have. And so that was another component that may not have brought the attention to the fields until the end of the master planning process.
Okay, so Megan, I just want to be sure that, so they were these sports teams were given the opportunity during the master plan to ask for more fields or to ask for anything, and most did not, and then afterwards then spoke up, which Mark is saying because they didn't have access to so that's okay, all right.
That was one. I mean, obviously there's an increase in participation year round. Really the last 3 to 4 years has seen a dramatic change in the usage, coupled with the fact that they've lost the inventory that they've previously had. That's kind of brought us to where we are today.
Okay. The other thing,
Just to get in the record, my answer was yes.
Okay, yeah,
I
thank
had
you.
nodded, but yes.
yeah. From what was presented to us in January, there's been quite a few changes, but some of them are just like the dog park study from $300,000 to $50,000. That's a lot of money. How were those changes made?
Chair Sue, we as staff in our department put together some cost estimates, and then working with the engineering department, we're able to refine those cost estimates a little more. And as I said, there's several projects that need studies done or outreach, and so if we do a cumulative RFP to do all of those outreaches in a combined project, then you're utilizing those combined budgets toward that consultant cost and being able to move forward. Typically how we do this, we do get it in the budget, we do the best we can for that estimate, and then we can, when we bring those awards forward, if we do need additional funding, then we can add it at that time. And as I noted in the staff report as well, when we were putting the budget, when we were entering the budget in, we missed the bike pump track study. And so when we do the RFP, we can include that as an add alternative. And then when we bring the awards forward, we can request that that be added into the project and request that appropriation at that time.
Okay.
So it would add to the project as well.
Okay. Are there any commissioners who are not physically present that have any questions or anything that they would like to add now? Okay, I'm going to take the silence as a no, but if there is, speak now. So I guess now we have to decide what we want to do. If we want to pass it as is. I would agree, Commissioner Loftus, or not Loftus, Commissioner Frankham made the note of including trails. I also believe that that should be included in this. Oh, yes.
Just one thing, there isn't a motion on the floor yet, so before you discuss the motion.
I have to create a motion.
Somebody needs to create a motion. Thank you.
I move that we approve that we make an approval recommendation to the city council for the budget as proposed.
I second that.
So when can I make an amendment? Now? Oh, Mark has notes. Oh, not to me.
Two things. If you want to amend the motion, then you have to request that the individual who made the motion. Second, I want to remind Commissioner Alms about extensions. So yeah, she wouldn't be able to second the motion.
Okay. The amendments that so now that we have a motion, the things that I would amend, I would agree with Commissioner Frankham about adding the trail design and studies. I think trails was reflected in the master plan. Megan seems confused. It's on the last page of something that we have a trail design and on hold. Or even if, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, if I can just weigh in on that. I'm sorry, it wasn't a question,
wait.
but the trails design is on hold because we discussed it as part of the master plan, and the master plan recognized it as a high priority, but that we didn't plan out the trails yet, and that is being incorporated into the city's general plan update, which is currently underway. So that would be part of a trails element as part of the general plan.
So you would say that the trails is being covered by another budget, another committee,
You've been muted. To unmute yourself, press *6. You are no longer muted.
Sorry, the dais line keeps moving.
Oh, fun.
It's currently in a planning stage to plan out a trails plan overall for the whole city, and then individual trails would come forward as projects, and the Parks Fund would still be the appropriate place to move that forward. But we don't have a trail to put into the CIP just yet. We don't have a location identified. So the planning of it is underway, and it is part of the general plan update. So that is being covered right now, and that's the first step. And then the next step would be we start coming in and talking about the individual locations or prioritizing them and moving forward with development of them. The El Corazon Trail is part of the general fund, and that's being worked on out of the property management office in conjunction with the Friends of Oceanside. And that's because they manage the El Corazon as a property for the city. So they are working on that, and I think that the trails piece is moving forward. They currently have proposals in from consultants, and Parks and Recreation has recently been looped into that, so we'll be sure that we get those things before you so that you become aware of what's going on with those trails at El Corazon.
Okay. Commissioner Frankham? Commissioner Frankham, are you there? Commissioner Frankham?
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Can I be heard?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Is this a vote on the motion?
No, I'm just wondering what so I wanted to amend that there are trails. Megan's response is that there are trails, kind of a citywide study being done on trails, and that until there's a specific trail, that we don't necessarily need to add that to this CIP, is what I'm gathering. You were the one who brought up trails, but I also felt like it should be included. How do you feel about not including that?
I wasn't able to understand all that you said. If the question is, should the trails be included in this CIP recommendation to City Council, I say yes. If there's more to it, I might have missed it.
I don't know if I can do something that broad. Okay. The other thing I think that should be added is the pump track study. I'm glad that someone else is familiar with them. I think this is something Oceanside could really benefit from. As I was driving here, I was considering bringing this up and felt fearful that people were going to think I was crazy because we don't know what it is. I think this is definitely something that when I go to parks and chat up other random moms asking them what they want in the parks, this is something that is continually brought up. I know several moms that drive up to Riverside to use the facilities there. There's nothing like this in North County, and I think Oceanside should definitely do this. So I would recommend adding that to this. The pump track study. It seems that adding trails is this is not the appropriate time to do that, or that it's kind of already being covered. Are there any other amendments to the motion? Yes. You gotta use that mic.
I have a question. Again, it's a semantics type of thing.
Okay.
Megan, you said more than once that we're not one way or the other going to do a study on this. We're not going to do a study on this. It's going to go to an outreach, and we're going to approach it from that point of view. Could you explain a little bit about the difference between what is a study and what is a outreach program?
Commissioner Blankenship and Commission, a study typically includes outreach. So when you're doing a study, you're studying many components. You might be, just as an example, John Landis, we would do a building assessment to see what's needed on the building, just structurally and physically. But we would also do outreach to see what type of services and what type of recreational amenities are wanted out there, and that would help guide us toward what type of conceptual design is needed for the facility based on the type of services we'd be providing or the type of recreational activities that are going to occur there. So when we do study, it's kind of the broader term because it can include a lot of different things. But the outreach, the study will include stakeholder outreach, which is going to be the neighborhood, sports groups, the commissioners, various components. It'll include the library because they come out with the bookmobile, and that's just that particular project. So we like to call things studies because it's much more inclusive of different ways to go about gathering information that's going to help guide the conceptual design of something.
And so therefore implied in all that is a study is more comprehensive, more expensive to do, more lengthy to accomplish.
If we were starting from scratch on certain things, possibly, yes. But we have parks in place already, so I don't know that it's going to be that much more comprehensive, that much more extensive. But again, trying to pull them together, and if some of them work with the same community members, then we can have some cost efficiencies there with using the same consultant firm and pooling the money. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
So I have to ask you to amend your motion, correct? So if you would amend your motion to include the bike pump track study.
I'd like to amend my motion to include the
Bike pump track. Yeah.
Study,
Yeah.
I second.
Okay.
as opposed to the bike pump track outreach program.
Okay. And we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Now do I call for a vote? So I'm going to go, I'll start with our, telecommuter? Sure. I'll start with the people who are not physically present. Commissioner Herman, can you please vote?
Can you hear me?
I hear you.
I vote yes.
Okay. Commissioner Wonder? Commissioner Wonder? Commissioner Wonder, we're just waiting on your vote. We can't hear you yet.
All commissioners are unmuted right now.
So do I skip her? What do you want me to do?
We can come back.
Okay, we'll come back. Commissioner Frankum, you are unmuted. Feel free to vote.
I vote yes.
Okay, Commissioner Loftus, you are unmuted. Feel free to vote.
I vote yes.
Okay. Commissioner Satili,
I vote yes.
Commissioner Alms.
I'm required to abstain.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Blankenship.
I vote yes.
And Commissioner Sue votes yes. Commissioner Wonder, are you there? We would still love your vote. You are unmuted, so you should.
I say yes.
Yeah.
I vote yes.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so we're going to move along, and here comes Mr. Mark Olson. Oh, it's so, yeah, I'll have to look it up on YouTube. It's so cool. Yeah, it's cool.
Good evening, Chair Sue, Vice Chair Loftus, Parks and Rec Commissioners. Good to be with you this evening. Mark Olson with the Parks and Recreation Division of the Neighborhood Services Department. I'm here this evening to give you a report on what we've been doing in the Parks and Recreation Division with respect to the COVID-19 response, and bring you into the loop as to how we've been apportioning our time and reallocating our arrangements. So just to kind of give you a start as to how impactful this was, not only to Parks and Recreation, we know everybody has been greatly impacted by this incident, but as somewhat of a inside look, we had just released our brand new division recreation guide, which was a great extensive effort both in time and resources on staff to a digital format. So we released that on March 2nd and started registration, and on the 15th we had to completely reverse course. So very proud of what the staff did. It is a great improvement to what we had been doing in the past, and we look forward to instituting that again in the future, but I did want to highlight that because it kind of does set the table for the timeline of what staff has been doing. So on March 15th, the Emergency Center, Operations Center was activated at a level 2 virtual. Traditionally in an Emergency Operations Center, you would have the different section chiefs in a room working together, but because of the nature of this situation, in this incident, it was a virtual one, so we remoted in and had regular phone calls. Subsequently, all that time and effort on preparing that guide for registrations and things like that had to reverse course, and staff immediately began to refund the remainder of winter session courses and canceled any spring registration that was about to commence. To give you an example, it was such a great burden on the ActiveNet system, which is what handles our registration, which is a national program. It crashed their system because of all of the Parks and Rec facilities and everything that had to offer refunds. It crashed their system to where they called us and says, we can't handle these remotely, where normally we would handle it back to the credit card. We actually had to manually process every single refund that happened. So kudos to the team, but also our finance department who assisted us with processing those. We strive to keep their job easy, but this was a great burden on them as well. So we appreciate their work to help us get those refunds processed. Parks and Recreation staffing efforts. Traditionally in a situation that's an emergency, we would be remobilized to support the Emergency Operations Center efforts. Primarily we operate in care and shelter. I apologize for the incomplete word on that. So as part of the response, we were mobilized to support those efforts. The two main areas of focus that our team kind of transitions into are the operations section, which houses the care and shelter portion, and then the logistics section, which has the donations element to the Emergency Operations Center. The great majority of our staff were repositioned into the care and shelter now. Because there wasn't necessarily a big shelter component, which is what we're more accustomed to with a natural disaster, a fire, things like that, ours more was aligned with the care component, and obviously the biggest component was those in the vulnerable populations, primarily in our senior population. You'll notice what we did traditionally is we immediately, because of the population that is the most vulnerable, we ceased all operations at our senior centers, the biggest one obviously being their nutrition program. We have two elements to that: the congregate, which is the in-house one that provides the meal at the facility, as well as provide them social engagement, things of that nature, in addition to any classes that they may take there. So we immediately converted all of the congregate settings to either a pickup system or a home-delivered meal program, which we currently have a very large one, but this just increased that to a great extent. In addition to converting an existing nutrition program, our City Council generously allocated funds for us to develop a program internally with the purpose to provide food to those that were most vulnerable that weren't currently being serviced by the nutrition program at Country Club, but also to provide some economic assistance to some of the restaurants that had been shuttered and unable to provide opportunities for their employees to work. It was a great opportunity for us to develop something, and we quickly were able to connect with about 4 or 5 restaurants using our economic development division and the contacts they had. And since that time, we've been delivering over 1,700 meals a week just within that program. Initially, the funding for that was about a month's worth, but council has given us additional appropriations for us to continue that program. I believe it's slated to go through the end of June at this time. And here are some of the partner restaurants we've been working with during that time as part of this program. They've been great to work with. A lot of them are downtown here on the Coast Highway area. A couple of them are fairly new restaurants, so it was great to kind of at least help them to get their meals and their talent out there. And so it's been a great relationship and been very easy to work with. We've been appreciative of the partnerships we've sustained thus far. Some other elements that we've been partnered with is the distribution. So we have the meal program, but we also have distribution of meals, and we have a lot of different organizations that we partner with. Some of them include the Oceanside Unified School District, the Veterans Association of North County, Boys and Girls Club, Salvation Army, Brother Benno's, North County Health Services, Helping Hands Worldwide. That's actually a military organization, so you'll notice that picture there is their distribution site at Melba Bishop, which is the site for several distributions, but that picture is our partners with the Helping Hands Worldwide. Some additional ones, the San Diego Food Bank, the North County Food Bank, and the Helen Woodward. They operate and have provided at no cost meals as well as pet food to individuals in that senior population for their companions. So it's a great partnership that we've been able to establish and work seamlessly. And there you see a few photos of those distribution sites as well as some of the volunteers that make that possible. In addition to the mobilization of specific needs, there's the personal touch, and so our staff, you'll notice these are our transportation staff that generally assist with obtaining rides for senior citizens. With the lack of transportation needs, they've kind of reallocated their time to making regular contacts with the individuals that are utilizing those programs, making sure that any of their needs are met in different fashions, but also ensuring that there's a personal connection should they need anything. In addition to the senior programming, we've strived to provide different activities online through our virtual recreation, which is a new word that's sweeping the country. But using our social media platforms, we do arts and crafts projects, family activities, at-home lessons, different things. You'll notice we're doing trying to push a family camping night in their backyards this weekend, just to try and make the best of a situation none of us thought we'd be in. But try and find ways to get our staff, continue to stay connected and let them know that Parks and Recreation is thinking about them. And there you see a few of our staff doing some of their posts and setting things up. So looking ahead, we're currently in phase 2 of the county reopening plan. That does include no gatherings outside of anybody outside of family units. Our parks, fields, and tennis and pickleball courts are open for family unit participation. The restrooms and parking lots continue to remain closed. I will say this will probably be updated soon because subsequent to me making this presentation, the county did have a meeting today. So I would anticipate a new health order coming out later today that may have some new components to that. The future phases include lifting some of the restrictions. That will all be determined by the county officials as well as the state officials. And Parks and Recreation is preparing plans to reintroduce phasing as appropriate and permitted. And we have several options based upon what those phasing opportunities look like. Again, we anticipate a new public health order coming probably tonight or tomorrow based upon their meeting this afternoon. And we'll be ready to go with whatever we're allowed to do to ensure that we are providing opportunities to the public. And here, again, it's been a great opportunity for our staff to work in a different way and connect with our staff. So there's some pictures of them doing their work, and we're just real appreciative of our council that provides us opportunities and funding to do something new. The meal program has been very successful. We like to say that the governor stole our meal program idea because we had it first, and then the next thing you know, the state came out with one. But the staff has been working very hard to try and do the best they can to stay connected and provide opportunities and to be ready with whatever opportunities we have coming out of this. And with that, I'll take any questions if necessary.
Okay, we'll do this the same way we did the last one, where I will just call on individuals and give them an opportunity to speak. Commissioner Blankenship, do you have any questions or comments?
I do, thank you. Could you go back to the slide that's labeled looking ahead?
He is
Please.
currently
Where did it
picking
go?
something up.
Sorry, I didn't look up.
I just broke the presenter, so just give me a second here. Yes.
One of the things I'd like to ask you is, would it be possible, I know this is a PowerPoint presentation, and there's some ownership, intellectual property ramifications, but is it possible to get a hold of this report? Can you send it to us?
Commissioner Blankenship, Chair. Absolutely, we'll send that out subsequent to this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Also, is there any indication, it says that we're in phase 2. I have a general idea of what phase 2 means, but I don't have any clue what phase 3 is, and how do you get from phase 2 to phase 3? Is that something that you deal with on a daily basis, or is that something that you don't collect data on that?
Commissioner Blankenship, Commissioners, that is something we watch every day, not just here in Parks and Recreation, but everybody in the city is watching if there's any updates to the public health order. The phase 2, without getting into the specifics, is set by the county, and then obviously they are dictated to by the state as to what parameters that they can operate in. We're in phase 2, the initial stages. We believe that we'll move to a later phase of phase 2 with the new requirements, but again, that's dictated by the county, and we're making preparations to do everything we can within each phase.
And but that's still phase 2. And what are you looking for in that upgrade if you could get everything you wanted?
Commissioner Blankenship, if I'm understanding correctly,
What do you anticipate?
In phase 2?
Phase 2 plus.
From a Parks and Recreation standpoint, or
Yes,
from?
From a Parks and Recreation standpoint. Thank you.
From a Parks and Recreation standpoint, I believe phase 2 is not going to change too much of what we're in right now. The real change, I think, for us will come when the gathering component is adjusted. Right now, we're currently under a no gathering as part of the order, as part of the public health order. So until that adjusts, our operations probably won't change too much.
Is that phase 2 plus, or phase 3, or phase 4?
The gathering, to Commissioner Blankenship, Commissioners, as I understand it, and Megan can correct me, I don't think that that's been identified in the gathering component in any single phase at this point. That will be the public health officer's determination. It's not been tied to a specific phase.
And also the movement from one phase, or phase plus, as you may call it, we don't really have, there's nothing on paper that says, okay, once you complete this, now you're in phase 3.
No.
Commissioner Blankenship, it's all dictated by the state, and it's all based upon the metrics that the state has determined.
And the state doesn't tell us what that is?
They have set it out, but it's not really in stone. It kind of changes. So we don't know specifically.
So there's no
when.
way to anticipate, and we can't say in 3 weeks we will be able to do this.
We won't know that at this time, which is why we are making preparations for several different options, so that whatever the case may be, we will be able to advance, whether it be a programming or a facility component. We'll be able to implement whatever we are allowed to do based upon the public health order.
How do you categorize then activities in a park that are not what's the right word? Active activities. In other words, picnicking. What phase is picnicking? How do you differentiate between what you can do in a park now, which is walk, as opposed to being able to picnic?
Currently, Commissioner Blankenship, currently you can be in a park doing stationary activities with your household unit. That is the phase and the restrictions that we're allowed to participate in now. So you can go to a park, sit down with your family, kick a soccer ball around as long as it is within the family or the household unit.
And would a family constitute, for example, a soccer club?
Commissioner Blankenship, it would not. It's defined as household units, individuals residing within the same household.
Do we know where a soccer club is in relationship to phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4?
Commissioner Blankenship, that will be in the future phase. I believe initially it will be phasing in phase 3.
There, Commissioner Blankenship, there is a proposed pilot for phase 2 advanced in preparing us into phase 3. That's being proposed by the county, and it does include youth clubs and some sports, but what we have found is when the actual health order comes out, it's much more defined. So we see these things going forward for policy decisions. Are we ready to move this way? But then it's from the county board of supervisors, it's directed to the county health officer, the public health officer, who then puts in the specific requirements. And until that public health order actually comes out, we don't know exactly what we're being able to do. So as Mark is stating, right now it's within the household. So maybe the next one will include those youth sport clubs, but they may be limited to 10 individuals together. So it still may have limitations, and it may not mean your entire club can get together. It may still be on a limited basis, but we won't know until that public health order comes out.
So there is no list of what activity fits into what phase? When can I have a wedding at Heritage Park?
The Commissioner Blankenship, the city of Oceanside, we put our recommended phases based on if the county authorized 10 people, then what that would mean for our operations. And then if they authorized 50 or less people, what that would authorize. And we can, that's a memo that was forwarded to the city manager, and I think to the city council. So we can forward that to the commission as well. And you can see that. But that's not what dictates what we can actually do. We're still under the public health order. So if the public health order opens up to a certain volume of gathering, then we have already identified what we, in our operations, would consider allowable in that gathering.
So I would come to the Parks and Recreation Department and say, I want to have a baseball game at the park, and we're going to have 15 people from my business. We're going to meet on Saturday. Can we do that or not?
Right now, no.
Okay. When can I do that?
That would likely come in our listing of phase 3, unless the public health order specifically precludes it.
So it's going to be a specific declaration for each and every activity.
Commissioner Blankenship, the county will define what those parameters will be, and we will operate within those and offer whatever we can based upon those county things. We have to operate within what the county health order defines. They will set that, and we will operate within it.
Okay.
But you won't have to ask for permission to do that. Like, once it's open, then it will just be open, correct? Like, he's saying, if I have 15 people, do I need to ask? And you're, no.
Correct. It would fall, if it's within the public health order, it would fall into our normal operations of, if you wanted to reserve a field, then you would go through the normal operations to do so.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
Well, I guess my problem is I can't read the newspaper and determine what I can do and what I can't do. I have to come to the Parks and Recreation Commission or the Parks and Recreation Department
No.
for them to tell me, yes, you can have this game or you can't have this game.
Commissioner Blankenship, as we get new information and are able to move through different phases, we will message that out through our different messaging platforms.
Okay, thank you.
I will go next, and then we'll start calling on more people. I want to start by saying, you mentioned the social media, and as someone who has young children who we're trying to think of crafts, they've just been excellent. They've been excellent crafts. It's been such good content, and it's been so consistent. I would really recommend everyone who is on the commission to, if you're on Instagram also, to be following, I think it's Oceanside Rec or something, to follow Oceanside Rec, because there's also, I just referred someone who's like, oh, I miss tennis so much. And I'm like, well, you and your husband can go play tennis. And I just sent her the slide. So they do have that, that information available about what is happening and what you're able to do and what you're not able to do. Mark, I have a couple of questions for you. Not that these are your policies, but you're here. So keeping parking lots closed, what's the heart of that? Like, what's the point if the park is open but the parking lot is closed? Why?
Chair Sue and commissioners, one of the reasons I believe, obviously, Public Works oversees that. With the limited, the county health order permitted the parking lots to be opened at 50% capacity. So we can't completely open them per the public health order at this time. With the way our parking lots are structured, it's difficult to shut down half of a parking lot and really enforce it. Initially, the public health order said cone off every other's parking lot.
Yes.
And so from a maintenance standpoint and from an operational standpoint, provided, there's not a lot of activity in a park when you don't have teams or groups or gatherings. The recommendation per the county health order is to go to the parks that are closest to you, enjoy them, and then participate there. We haven't seen the need to open the parking lots. Just to open them at 50% could actually become much more of a challenge to manage than to keep them closed. And that was the decision that was made.
Okay. I'll ask this question. You can answer it however you want. What are some of the activities or the programs that you think will be the last to open?
Chair Sue, obviously everything's going to be dictated by the public, by the county health order. We're preparing internally. We anticipate some of the senior programming will most likely be some of the ones on the latter end just because of the population. But that doesn't mean we won't have any programming. It just means that that's something we're preparing will most likely be in the latter stages of the planning.
Okay. Where's aquatics? Like, summer is coming.
Chair Sue, aquatics, obviously it's something we're closely watching. We're actually on calls. I'm on calls a couple times a week with other directors throughout the county as well as county officials. We're preparing for summer camps, aquatics, things like that. So that's a topic of conversation. I know it was a very large topic of conversation at the county meeting today. Right now, pools are still slated to be closed, but the conversations are starting to take place and where those might be able to be reintroduced. We feel that that's one that can be managed somewhat easier than the other ones, and we're making preparations for lots of different opportunities based upon what the public health order allows us to do.
When you say the other ones, what does that mean?
Chair Sue, other programming opportunities.
So it's just other classes?
Classes, camps, obviously it's summer, so camps are a big topic of conversation, not just here locally, but throughout the county, and to how to safely do that. The county has given us some parameters as how to operate camps in a safe manner and what those need to look like. So we're incorporating those into our planning processes.
You didn't talk about this, but I received this, so just to let other commissioners know, there was a survey sent out by the Parks and Rec Department about camps and what would be most useful and most helpful. So that is something that the department is working on and trying to figure out. And I found it very helpful just to even understand and to know what was what potential options were as far as receiving a box or a kit or, just a couple of different options. So let's move along. Commissioner Frankum, do you have any questions or comments regarding the COVID presentation? What?
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. New technology. Yes, I wanted to, not so much questions, but comments. I wanted to thank Ms. Crooks and Mr. Olson for the explanation you gave us over the last few minutes. It clarified a number of questions that I had, although there's still a lot of clarification pending, but that'll come in due time. But far more important, I wanted to compliment both of you and your entire staffs for stepping up and doing what needed to be done to address this unusual situation over the last couple of months. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
If I can just comment on that, Mark has taken great leadership on the care and shelter piece. I've been working in various aspects and also trying to maintain regular business moving forward, but Mark has really been the big lead in the COVID response with care and shelter and employing his staff to do new things, and they turned around and shifted gears very quickly. And as he mentioned, it wasn't an easy task to close up shop and handle the ramifications of that at the same time ramping up for a whole new type of operation under completely new conditions and policies and protocols and everything, and it continues, and our future is going to continue to be new planning and new programming for them, and they're all smiles and ready for the challenge, and his leadership has been great, and the staff have been awesome as well.
Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Loftus?
I'll just second Tom Franken's remarks. I've been, even prior to Mark's report tonight, I've been observing on social media all the kinds of things that Parks and Rec staff have been doing under the very strange circumstances of COVID, and I just commend him and his staff and hope that he will extend to the staff members our appreciation for them being creative and reaching out and providing for the needs of the community. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Wonder?
Yes, thank you very much. I would also like to thank Mark, and I would like to just make sure that we're all safe. I lost my sister last week to this virus, so I know how important it is that we all stay safe, and with the guidance of Mark and everyone and the county, this is what our goal should be, to be safe in our community with our family and friends. And I can't thank everyone enough. Thank you.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Genevieve. Commissioner Herman?
Did you say Herman?
I did.
I too would like to thank Mark and the entire staff of the Parks and Recreation Department for their guidance and leadership and help to the community during this crisis. And here's hoping that it doesn't last too much longer and we can fully reopen the parks and around the city and get back to normal. Thank you.
Commissioner Sotilli?
Hi, I have no questions or concerns.
Okay. And Commissioner Alms?
Again, thank you for everything you did. It was quite impressive to see how you your staff reached out also. I do have a question. I receive updates from County News Center. So every time there's an update that goes to the county from the state, how they're doing, and I received one today talking about how they're thinking they can speed things along to update things quicker for phase 2. So my question is the timing. After the county gets an okay to, meet certain criteria, and then it goes to the city and they're saying, this is what we can do now. What is the turnaround time after the county says, we can move to this next step, we've met all the guidelines, city, and then it actually happens?
Commissioner Alms, Chair Sue, and fellow commissioners, great question. I appreciate the question. We are anticipating changes probably more eagerly than anybody else, because we want to continue to provide what we can to the community. So we've actually developed, not just in Parks and Recreation, we actually have, as a city, drafted reopening plans and what those would look like, what phases we would implement certain things, and what technology, equipment, sanitization procedures need to be employed to be able to hit those marks in the shortest possible time. So we are waiting for approval to move forward based upon the public health order. Really, once we get approval to do something, it would be a matter of internally just determining, do we have the staffing to mobilize, in what fashion and in what speed, and then making sure we can comply with whatever parameters they've set for a specific project or specific allocation that they've now allowed us to do. So it would be fairly quick. We don't anticipate it would be a matter of weeks. We anticipate it would be a matter of days to be able to make sure we have this appropriate staff, message out whatever criteria that activity would need to be performed within, and then move forward into the implementation phase of it.
Can I have a follow-up question? So I receive these texts that come. Is there a way with the city, when things start opening, my concern is Parks and Recs more, will we receive a text, there's our website we can go to, what can we go to keep updated, and if anyone asks me, where would I tell them to go?
Commissioner Alms, Chair Sue, fellow commissioners, we've tried to, because we have several different platforms within the city, we've tried to message everything through our public information officer to be the point so we don't get out in front of another. So we will message that to them. The fastest way, I think, is to be alert to the city website, get notifications, but also the social media platforms. We send them out as quickly as we can from the public information officer's office, and then we generally share after that, so on the different platforms. So it probably won't come from us first, but we'll be right on the tail of the official city publications, whether it be on social media or press releases. So that's what you'll want to watch, is the official City of Oceanside accounts.
I believe I've spoken to everyone. Let's look at our agenda. We're not sure when our next meeting will be, because it is 2020. So with that, meeting adjourned. Now you got to sterilize this, okay?